Welcome back to M&A in the Trade, and today marks a special milestone for us, Geener. It's our 11th episode, and that's a huge achievement, considering that most podcasts don't make it past their fourth episode. So I'm really grateful for all the effort and wisdom you brought to this season, Geener, and congratulations on our first 10.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, 11 episodes. Wow, when you said that number to me, I was like, has it really been that many?
It went by so fast.
You know, I always say when you're talking amongst friends, the time goes by. So I think all these conversations have been a lot of fun.
Absolutely. So, reaching double digits feels definitely extra special. And we couldn't have done it without you, Geener, or our listeners and the incredible conversations with our guests. And in this episode, we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to do a mid-season recap, if I may say. We are going to take a look back at the journey we've shared and recap the best moments from our first 10 episodes. And, each one has contributed to a deeper understanding of how M&A is shaping the field services and the trade sector, from the strategic impact of private equity and to the often overlooked importance of integration and post-merger integration, and a lot of amazing topics. So, and I'd like to think of this season like a well-crafted symphony, where each episode is kind of like a unique note that comes together to create a harmonious understanding of M&A and field services. There aren't a lot of podcasts out there that really combine M&A and field service, and I think there's been a lot of good effort that went into bringing these two together. So today, we'll be replaying key segments from those episodes and discussing some of the biggest key takeaways along the way. Are you ready to dig in, Geener?
Let's go. 11 episodes. We got a lot to talk about.
Let's go. So we'll start by going all the way back to episode number 1, where we explored how private equity is building industry giants. And Geener, we talked about how PE has been consolidating fragmented industry in field services like janitorial, HVAC, commercial kitchen, across different segments, commercial, residential, and industrial. And there doesn't seem to be any stopping. We went from 300 private equity firms, shops in the 1990s to over 4,000 today. Huge surge in opportunities for national platforms. So, Geener, you had some great insights on this, especially from your experience in the roofing vertical. How are you seeing private equity continuing on now, closing out or going into the end of the year 2024?
Continuing to do it. I mean, talking to a couple of different PEs that are working in different spaces, other home residential spaces on the consumer side, different field service places. Telecom's a big deal right now, right? So lots of B2B telecom aggregation going on, as everyone talks 5G and high-speed internet and fiber optics, and all the
infrastructure
around that. That's a really big space, and our need for data to our homes is increasing. So in short, lots of aggregation, maybe even new spaces starting to open up, but I don't think that's going to change very much.
If anything, it's going to probably accelerate with the Fed easing up the interest rate now. So awesome. With that said, let's hear some of the key highlights from this episode.
Here's my perspective. They go, with all of them that I've worked with and I've interacted with, their primary intent is to build great business platforms.
Absolutely.
That's always the leading case, right? How do you build businesses that are sustainable and grow and provide value to an end market, right?
Yes.
And, look, the good thing about the American economy in that same parallel time frame that you're talking about, the growth of private equity private equities, right, is, the economy expanded enough where a lot of these end market verticals just have a lot of very great entrepreneurial spirits developing great businesses. And the fragmentation of a lot of these markets is pretty broad, right? So there's a like of an intersection happening of, this explosive growth of an economy in the last 30 years, the growth of private equity sectors, and the intersection of that on how do we build great businesses then that can offer kind of bigger solutions. And we can talk about that in later episodes, bigger, better solutions to end customers in different markets and different verticals.
All right. Now, episode 2, we shifted focus to how new private equity platforms can get acquisition ready. And we uncovered that really the key to successful acquisition and kicking off your platform is clear communication, cultural alignment. And if you don't have that, really the integration process can collapse like a bridge with a weak foundation. And we also talked about the importance of growth synergies, not just cost cutting, where you made a great point there, Giner, that you don't want to just be thinking about what's the cost I'm going to cut out, but you want to think about how to unlock long-term value. So this episode really challenged the conventional wisdom of focusing solely on back office efficiencies. What's been your key takeaway out of this episode, Giner?
Have a really good aligned definition with your private equity partner, between the management team and the private equity partner. What does integration mean for that business? And have a good aligned definition of that, right? Once you have that, then you can start thinking about going to do the integration, right? So don't just try to bring two businesses together. What does integration need? What do you need it to be successful? How do you think about it? Then you can go things like culture building, make sure you don't lose sight of the revenue opportunities we talked about in the episode, and make sure you build a playbook. But definition first, everything else later.
I love it. With that said, let's dive into the key highlights of this episode.
I think what's important to recognize is everybody leans in on the synergies that what I would say are typical in terms of back office synergies or cost synergies. Let's just broadly put them in as cost synergies. And the reason they lean in on those in the thesis of acquiring and integrating businesses, those are easy to track, right? The harder synergies are, hey, I bought this business that has something very special about it. The way they present themselves to the market, the way they present themselves in front of their end customers. There's something about this business that makes it very special. How do we assist the business in growing faster? Because growth is a better synergy than what I'll say cut. I'm using the word cut a little succinctly here. And look, there's a component of that. Like I'll give you an example. As you grow as a business, you should get purchasing synergies, right? You should really be able to go leverage the scale of your businesses and go drive some costs down in the back office because of your scale.
All right, moving to our third episode, where it took us into the janitorial services sector. That was a surprising one for me. I never realized how huge this sector is. It's $1 billion global industry that's really, there's a lot of consolidation happening in that sector, especially post-COVID. And we, Giner, talked about how this sector is really ripe for growth and how private equity-backed platforms are really bundling complementary services to create stickier customer relationship and expanding and doing acquisition to expand their service portfolio. So this was our first deal room episode, and we saw how low barriers to entry can make the janitorial services an attractive space for M&A. Any key insights in addition to what we covered on this episode, Giner?
No, not so much additional insights. I think what's important for everyone to understand is that's a necessity of service, right? There's always going to be a need for janitorial. The need may change a little in terms of, those services, but the reason you build kind of a more holistic suite of janitorial services is understand that as customers' preferences change, you have an offering that can change with those preferences. But in aggregate, the janitorial space is going to continue to grow because that need's always going to exist.
Absolutely, and like you said, there's a good commercial playbook playing out in janitorial that I think can be adapted to other sectors as well, in terms of how to do acquisitions to complement your or to supplement rather and complement your portfolio. It's great. So let's listen in to the key highlights from this episode.
And you know what's interesting looking at these companies, maybe other than the facilities group, but even the facilities group, like janitorial is just one service and a portfolio.
That's
so
right.
I couldn't find like a big acquirer, you know, with over say 10, 15 acquisitions that just didn't have like a portfolio of services. So it's interesting to see that this is typically an add-on service, or yeah, it could be a core service, but it's part of a portfolio. Like you look at Allied Universal here, they've made 100 acquisitions, but janitorial is only one part of what they do. Neighborly, they're like a franchise service business. Like they have, Mon loans, pest control, and plumbing. You look at Kepwash, like you said, it started as fleet washing business, not necessarily commercial services, janitorial commercial services. You look at KBS, the same. The facilities group, though, they're very specialist.
Well, if you think about it, it makes sense, right? Your customer acquisition costs are really high typically in any business. It's hard to get a customer and keep them. You know this is about your own business, right? But here you are, you acquire a business that's doing a home, let's just say in the janitorial space. And now that you've integrated that business into your other services, lawn services is an example. Now I can introduce that homeowner to my lawn services business, and now I pick up another incremental piece of business that I may or may not have had, right? If I had it, then I make myself what I'll call stickier, and it's harder for a customer to leave when you have more services, because then they got to find more companies or another one like you to replace, right? Or if you don't have it, it's, hey, the comfort of, wouldn't it be nice to just deal with one company for all your services as opposed to 5?
Moving into episode number 4, featuring Jeff Johnson, who shared invaluable insights as a seasoned CFO. I really loved your interaction with Jeff, going back at, probably 5 years with Jeff, you and him. And actually, that's how the three of us got to know each other, working together at a previous private equity platform. And Jeff emphasized that during M&A, it's really critical for CFOs to focus both on cost synergies and growth synergies. And also we touched on how mishandling cultural integration can really lead to loss of key people and long-term value destruction, especially in a service-based industry like field service. So this episode really underlined that balancing financial objectives with cultural alignment is paramount. And that's funny to hear, coming from a CFO who you would think would be only concerned with the numbers. While that's true, but I think the alignment to the people was a key takeaway from this episode. Any takeaways for you, Geener, from this episode?
Yeah, first of all, I didn't realize it's been that long since I talked to Jeff. Now I feel bad that I have to call him. There's one takeaway. I need to call Jeff Johnson. My takeaway in aggregate, like the thought process for me on this episode is the P&L should tell you what to do, not how to do it, right? And I think people confuse this too. Sometimes they look at a P&L and something's wrong and they go take immediate action. They don't think about, how do I do it right? How do I get people there? How do I help them understand the problem I'm trying to solve? So I think it's important that we recognize the P&L is a tool for decision-making processes, which means making sure you understand the culture of your team, how you need to do it properly, and how do you maintain the business. Not the P&L says something's wrong, go increase price, to be very simple, right? So that's my takeaway.
I love it. So yeah, look at the P&L to understand the what, but then go and observe, go to the Gemba, talk to the people, and dive into the business, understand, the why, and then to inform the how. With that said, let's listen back to the key takeaways and segments from this episode.
Maybe, Jeff, like, what's your experience in the upstream of the acquisition itself? And what have you seen in those acquisitions? And maybe where do we trip ourselves up sometimes?
Great question.
You know, that's a great question. And this is going to sound like the wrong answer coming from the CFO. But, because people will look at the numbers till the cows come home. But the real question is, who's going to run the business? Who's your leader? Because if you don't have a leader in place or the right leaders in place, that business will implode. You'll lose all of your employees. And then what is making it special? So if you're a service organization, guess what? It's all about people. And it's funny, when you look at a P&L, you'll often see that the general ledger will have all sorts of different accounts. How much did I spend on subscriptions, and how much did I spend on hotels, and how much did I spend on coffee? And then they got one line that says payroll. It's like, well, wait a minute. That's it? What about the payroll is important? What about my employees that are important? So upstream, it really is about who's going to lead the business and what makes it successful. And especially if I'm buying it and integrating it into another business, I could break that really quickly because they have been successful for some reason, and it's usually about the people. And usually, if it's about the people, it's a unique process and structure. So how do you adapt that, and how do you not lose that?
All right, episode 5. We kind of drew an analogy there where we likened due diligence to home inspection, because you got to uncover the hidden risks. You got to uncover the hidden risks before making the final decision, and you don't want to surprises. Surprise is not a good thing when you're doing M&A, especially at an accelerated rate. So we talked about how due diligence should be really bi-directional, where both the buyer and the seller evaluating whether there is a fit. And it's very much, introducing yet another analogy, it's very much like dating.
Yes.
So we provided some insights into how proper due diligence ensures that the deal benefits both parties. Giner, you're astute acquirer. What's the one tip you would give each to the seller and to the buyer as they enter this dance, this dating period? To
the seller, there's never a lack of asking questions. Ask the questions that are on your mind, no matter how small they are. Just ask the questions. You'll get the answers one way or another, right? So that you can go into it with comfort that you know as much as you need to know about the transaction and what's going to happen, right? To the buyer, make sure you spend the time to get to know the business and whether the fit of the cultures of the two businesses will work, right? Because at the end of the day, if you have two very successfully independent businesses and you're bringing them together, you want to have a new business that's even more successful, right? But if both of them are independently successful for very materially different reasons, and you can't bring them together, you're destroying value in both long term. So spend the time to understand how they're going to fit. If they're really going to fit, don't make it just a financially based decision, because you'll pay for it in the long run.
I love it. And that's a great way to get into the key segments from this episode. So let's listen back to the key takeaways.
It's really important to the owner to do the diligence with your prospective buyer too, because you want to see if you're a match. I like to think of diligence. I think my friend Bill, who said this to me once. Diligence is like the dating part of a relationship, right? It is bi-directional, because essentially we're informing the ownership of what the business will potentially look like after close, right? So it's their opportunity to date us, right? See what kind of food we like, see what kind of drinks we like. What kind of
get babies? No babies? What do you want to do?
Yeah, you get it. Yeah, I mean, it's truly an opportunity for the owner to actually see if we're a fit or not a fit, right?
Let's have the tough conversations up front.
Yeah, it totally is. It's, you know, it's where the whole idea, because like the acquisition itself is birthed of an idea, like, oh, we can make this fit with our business, and it's all great, and everybody goes out to dinners and everyone's excited, and then you get into diligence, and you know, some eggs get broken in diligence, right?
All right, halfway through our 6th episode, where we zeroed in on home services and Geener's playground and the opportunities for market consolidation. And this is really, Geener, you highlighted that there's growing demand for outsourced home services, coupled with industry fragmentation, which really present a very ripe market for M&A. And we touched on innovative models like surge pricing, where, you know, service providers could really follow the Uber model during peak demand periods like emergency repairs. So unfortunately, there's been a lot of natural disasters happening around the US this time around. But this just highlights the need for home service companies in such tough periods for a lot of homeowners. Any key takeaways from this episode on the home services industry, Geener?
Yeah, maybe you hit on natural disasters. So our audience is very broad. To my friends and family, and frankly to everybody in Florida right now during the hurricane that's going on Milton right now. Please be safe. Hopefully at some point you get to listen to this and smile along with us. Yeah, the home services is a big business. I mean, homes continue to grow in the US, but more importantly across the world. There's always going to be a need for homes out there, and the services that go along with them, whatever they are for you, everybody needs a service, right? Whether that is as simple as somebody cutting your grass for you, or, you know, Rafter X fixing your roof after a big storm, you know, those are all home services businesses, all there to help you manage the home. That's probably the largest investment that you're going to have.
Absolutely. And like you said, I share your sentiment. If you're experiencing some natural disasters out in Florida or anywhere else in this world, be safe and God bless you. And with that said, let's go back and listen into some key takeaways from our 6th episode.
It's interesting. Speed, as the primary driver of your value proposition and demand. And you look at like Pizza Hut, right? When you're hungry, you need it. You know, it's not about so much the cost, but it's like getting there in 30 minutes, right? When you have a plumbing problem and water is leaking, you're not thinking too much about the cost. You want, whoever is going to be there the fastest. So I love that.
Well, it's what you said a few minutes ago, right? It's a version of the Uber model, right? It's the Uber mentality of the world, right? When Uber's very busy, customers pay surge pricing, right? For better service, there's surge pricing, right? This isn't very different than that, right? There is when there's a need, like if I'm doing a casual remodel of a bathroom, then I'm going to be a little bit more like, I'm going to get quotes. I want to understand it as a homeowner. I'm going to take my time. Maybe I go with the lowest price. Maybe I don't. It really depends on what my ask is. But man, if I got a flood in my house, I'll be like, yeah, just get out here. No problem. I'm paying. Right. So there's something really special there.
All right, episode 7, and this must be my favorite episode, Geener, and I'm keen to see which one was yours. And in episode number 7, we were joined by Robert Cheesley to talk about organizational change management and how it really preserved the core value of acquired companies while integrating shared services like IT and cybersecurity. And I loved Robert's approach to integration and his philosophy of do no harm which really focuses on minimal interference with the core operation of the acquired companies while integrating infrastructure and making infrastructure level improvement. Giner, you've talked about, the secret sauce and not messing with that secret sauce. So maybe you can give us a quick overview of your, philosophy around preserving the value that you, made the, decision to acquire or attracted you in the first place to acquire that company for.
Yeah. What makes it special are its people.
Right.
Don't lose sight of that. Those people are in front of the customers every day growing that business, right? That's always more important than anything we're going to do on the integration side. And it's really important to say, how much value am I generating or destroying? That should always be the question in integration by doing this, right? And it's okay. Sometimes you are going to destroy some value. I don't want to make it sound, because maybe you're creating more long-term value with some short-term, maybe destruction of value. But what I'm saying is at least be open about it, at least understand it, and at least work with your team, the teams on it to do it the right way.
Great takeaway. With that said, let's listen back to some of the key segments from episode number 7 with Robert Cheesley.
Our going in position has always been, we are going to preserve the autonomy of the acquired companies that we're bringing into the Wrench family. Meaning our going in position is do no harm. We don't want to mess with the secret sauce of these companies that have had respectable growth and have done well. Our perspective is, we want to identify and partner with organizations that are on fire, and then we're going to pour jet fuel on that fire by taking the responsibility of some of the shared services like HR, marketing, M&A, IT, so that the locations, the brands can focus on the things that they do so well. And that's really the service to the homeowner. So our goal is to, lean in with our acquired companies. There are certain, I don't like to use the word mandate, but there are certain non-negotiables. We're going to, migrate them to our operating system, our operating platform, which you both know is ServiceTitan. We're going to migrate them to our F&A system. We're going to migrate them to our infrastructure in the cloud model.
All right, episode 8. It took us into the heart of customer service integration with Rich Albanese, who stressed that during M&A, maintaining the customer experience should be prioritized just as much as achieving cost synergy. And he shared an example of how a poorly managed centralization of customer service led to dissatisfied customers and even spurred competition from former employees. And just the two operating models, the integration of the operating models of the two entities just didn't fit well. And it caused a lot of havoc. Giner, you've been through a couple of integrations. So customer service integration, how key is that?
Richard's dead on. It's the number one place you can screw things up. Customers have an innate sense of what they want because of the company that they deal with. So if you go in there and try to think that your customer service approach is better, even if it is, you have to remember, you have to figure out a way to bring the customer along in that journey. And it's not, I'm going to force them into something I think they will like better. That does not work. It will never work. You have to bring them along. And I think Richard said it best. This is where really understanding their customer service approach, really understanding their customers, and spending time in a transition, if it's necessary, doing it the right way is more important than doing it right away.
I love it. With that said, to avoid the customer service disasters, let's listen into the key takeaways from this episode.
It's a difficult problem to address. I think the first thing you need to do is go talk to customers, both the acquiring company and the acquired company, and understand kind of what their experiences and what their needs are. You need to talk to your frontline people. sales and service. They're the folks that are out there every day talking to your customers, the ones that have the relationships. And just as an aside, this transition from, so a high touch personalized service is typically the hallmark of a smaller company because they can do that. They're not worried so much about scale. Large multinational companies, it becomes very difficult to do that, right? Your technicians are fully booked all day long. They may not be available on call. So that transition is a natural transition anyways from early stage small companies to large companies, right? So as you grow.
Right.
So when you're acquiring, you're kind of almost accelerating that change. And so, you need to look at it carefully. You're probably going to have to wind up in this sort of contact center environment because that's how it's going to work at scale. But you need to bring those customers that are not used to that down that path in a way that bought into it, and in a way that there's typically kind of a rush. So this other experience I was at, there's this big rush. I had to send relocate people to Atlanta for this big call center, and there was all big change. This franchising employees and customers. So you have to be careful about the speed, and you have to understand what are the key touch points that customers love about their customers are the acquired company because they love that company, right? And so what do they love about that company? What do they love about the service? How can we retain that as we scale to the larger, operation and have bring those customers along with us?
Episode 9, we were joined by Hutton Henry all the way from the UK, from Beyond M&A, to talk about the often overlooked importance of technology due diligence. And we explored how key issues like cybersecurity vulnerabilities or outdated systems can really derail an acquisition and raise a lot of red flags. But we also touched on how tech assessments can really uncover hidden profit opportunities. Giner, tech due diligence, TDD, how critical is that for your M&A strategy?
First, I'll say this was my favorite episode.
Wow. Why is that?
I think Hutton had such an authentic approach to the way he thinks of things, which is very unique to find in a very technology-driven leader, right? He's very personal, and I appreciated his authenticity in the way he approaches things, right? This is one of my favorite episodes. What I'd say in this is technology, I can't underscore how important the technology diligence is, because you're going to need to know where you need to invest. You need to know where your security is. You need to know how you operate with technology in front of your customer. And ultimately, at some point in the future, you're going to start to think about, how do I take technology and make it part of my value proposition potentially? So really important to understand the landscape of the technology that you have in the business that you're buying during due diligence. Very important.
I love it. And like Hutton says, he's a psychologist in IT clothes.
Yes.
So with that said, let's listen back to some of the key highlights from episode 9.
Then Hutton, in your experience, what's one critical question that executives like Giner should be asking during technology due diligence, but maybe often overlooked? What's that one blind spot that could make or break a successful acquisition from a technology perspective?
Yeah, okay. I think really we've done cyber to death on this, right? So all of it will be there initially. So if I take it another lens and that opportunity piece that we were talking about earlier, I would love to know, that one question is, I'm going to give you 100%, hypothetically 100% more customers tomorrow. What's going to break? What do I need to spend money on? Right? And it's such a multi-layered question because I really want them to be honest. I'm really happy if it breaks something, right? I need to know what that is. And the number one thing I'm trying to find out, especially in services business, is if I increase the customer base by 100%, how much do I have to increase the headcount by? And how much value, so how much value is technology bringing? So it's quite a loaded question because I see them light up. Honestly, I bring that question up. I said, Imagine your buyer is about to bring 100% buy, customers in, and they do light up, which is fantastic. They're passionate about their businesses, but I want to see the different layers of responses. Like, I want to think about what could go wrong, what could be good.
All right, finally, episode number 10, and we emphasized why people are at the heart of successful M&A integration. And this has been a recurring theme across a lot of the episodes. And we talked about while many companies, focus on financial or IT integration, the real challenge lies in harmonizing cultures and leadership styles across acquired businesses. And we talked about getting clear on your operating model. What's the level of integration and standardization that you want to achieve, and be very cognizant of that decision going into your M&A strategy, so that you don't create any inefficiencies and miss some key growth opportunities, because each level of integration and standardization has its pros and cons, and it has to fit the model or the vision or the investment thesis that you're looking to achieve. Giner, what's your key takeaway from our final episode number 10 for this mid-season recap?
People are people. People need to be explained and explained again and explained again what you're trying to accomplish and how you're trying to do it, right? Don't leave them behind in this whole process, right? If you leave them behind, you will destroy more value in the long term of the organization than you will help. The other thing to think about is integration is continuous improvement. So you'll do an integration of one business, then you'll go to the next one and start your next integration, and your process will change a little bit. And the next time it'll change a little bit again. And it'll continue to change as you start to understand these businesses and you try to incorporate as much of those best practices as possible in your overall, because you're building a new culture that the sum of the total is greater than all those individual businesses was. So remember your people, remember that integration is continuous improvement.
I love that, Giner. What a great mindset. So with that said, let's listen back to some of the key segments from this episode.
Here's what I'll say. If someone gave you an empty notebook, right, and said, here's an empty notebook, just walked up to you and gave you a pen and an empty notebook, you're going to just start writing things, whatever they are, right? But if someone gives you a novel or a book to read, it's all written there, right? The analogy I'm trying to express is we forget how important the communication and the change management is to the people in the organization quite often. And we're doing more of the white notebook. So people start writing their own story, like making assumptions, wrong one most of the time, as opposed to giving them the book. Like, here's what we're doing. Here's why we're doing it. Let's have communication about it. Let's talk about it. What are your concerns about it? That whole step of bringing people in, helping them understand, writing, giving them a book that's written versus a 50 notebook. We have a lot of work to do.
And that's a wrap. This was a special milestone episode, where we've taken really a journey back through the highlights of our first 10 episodes. So we've uncovered, Giner, some really incredible insights about the intersection of M&A and the trade. So it's been an amazing to see how each conversation has, added a new layer to our, at least to my understanding of the industry. It's definitely been a masterclass for me. And as we look forward to what's next, we're excited about the future of this podcast and the opportunities that lie ahead from exploring the evolving role of technology in M&A. Talking about maybe AI and RPA, maybe that's a teaser for what's coming next, and really diving even deeper into the strategies that ensure long-term success post-acquisition. And we're just getting started here, ladies and gentlemen. So thank you everyone who has joined us on this journey, our listeners, our guests, and of course, my co-host Giner, whose expertise has been invaluable throughout this season. So if you've enjoyed what you've heard so far, make sure to subscribe, leave us a review, share this podcast with others in your network who might find these discussions valuable. We've got plenty more to come and plenty more to explore, and we can't wait to bring you even more insights in the episodes to come. Giner, any final thoughts on this mid-season recap?
What I'd say is we have a lot coming, and there is a lot of subject matter. It's more about prioritizing what the audience wants to hear for Yassine and myself. We have no limit to the subject matter to reach into. As he said, subscribe, give us feedback. We'll prioritize what we hear most, and we want to make this entertaining for you, but also educating. So feel free to reach out to either one of us. We're here, and we want to make this something that you take a few points away, and maybe it helps improve how you approach integration, acquisitions, or anything else we talk about.
I love it. With that said, until our next episode, make your days great, and I'll be talking to you soon. God bless.